Hey everybody, it's me. It is the morning of the 9th. I'm sitting here making a quick little recording here for you to show you how I would have tackled the Virginia Woolf Thoughts on Peace mini synthesis piece that you guys wrote last Friday. Forgive me, my voice is very weak right now. I have a very sore throat. So I'm going to just try to quickly hammer out like how I would respond to that prompt and explain why I'm doing what I'm doing. So remember, guys, this question was asking for you to look at the source as evidence of what civilians experience when they're put through combat. And then you have to explain to me, okay, how is this applicable in a new situation? If our country was to go to war against another country, let's call it Nation B, and we do the same kinds of things to their civilians, how will that impact us? Will that be strategically a smart move, or will that go badly for us? What are the possible outcomes for us, good or bad? So I'm just going to start hammering out how I might reply to this. So I'm going to start here the way that I often do when I'm doing synthesis work, since the sources often provide you with multiple sides of the argument. I'm going to begin with a counter argument statement. Uh, while harming civilians in the course of combat may work to demoralize the enemy, because that is like a legit possible outcome that might work in our favor. But I'm ultimately taking the stance that it's a bad idea. So here's my statement or my policy saying no. We should not conduct an attack which places civilians in harm's way uh, as yeah yeah as the consequences for inflicting terror and suffering on innocent people. Um, the consequences are far too great for our side. So I've kind of established part of my line of reasoning here saying, okay, well, what I'm seeing from the source is civilians suffering great terror and just other kinds of damage psychologically. And I'm going to talk about how that has pretty serious consequences for our side. So I'll just launch right into my first example of that. First, you must consider, I'm going to basically lay out like a quick sub claim here, I guess. We must consider the political damage we might do to ourselves. And so I'm going to bring in my first piece of evidence here. I'm going to draw from Woolf, and I think I'll quote her directly this time and find a way to make this quote work. It's where she's talking about the bomb falling and all of her feelings except dread just kind of, she says, all feelings save dull dread ceased. So I'm going to take that and embed that in my own thinking. Since civilians have no training or preparation for the um, horrors of combat once they are exposed. And so far, I haven't said anything from the source. I'm just kind of talking about my own assumptions here. Like civilians don't have any training, they're not prepared. And so here's where the source comes in. So once they're exposed, they often suffer. Sorry, typing is hard for me today. Terrific trauma. Um, a state of mind in which, and now I'll start with my little piece of quote, all feeling save one dull dread is what she says. Um, and she says ceased, but that's not going to really work in my sentence. So I'm going to modify the quote here and take the past tense verb, make it present, because my sentence is present tense. So all feelings save one dull dread ceases, end the quote, and then drop in immediately my source A and end the sentence. Okay, so I'm just using this little snippet and I'm describing it as a common thing. This is what Woolf felt, but I'm embedding it in a statement of my own where I say, hey, this is going to be applicable for all civilians. And I think that's a safe assumption to make here. She's not going to be radically different in the way she feels than I think most other civilians will. Okay, so let's move into why that's a big deal to make civilians traumatized. Striking such a devastating blow against people. You know what I should say? Devastating, and add to it here. Probably long lasting. Just really want to hammer home the point that it's going to scar them deeply. Against people who aren't our true enemies, or I should say our true targets, because they're technically the enemy, I guess, but we shouldn't really be targeting them if they're not part of the objective. So anyway, who aren't our true targets, well, what will be the result or the outcome of that? I got to explore the implications. That will likely earn us, note the qualifier likely, um, will earn us the disapproval of other nations, perhaps even our political allies. And I'll just finish the thought here, just making one more logical step forward. If we make other countries angry, make our allies angry, well, they're probably going to be less inclined to work with us, trade with us. So I'll put it like this: might be less inclined to cooperate or conduct trade with us. Okay, so I'm making a series of different inferences here, and I'm trying to do that really carefully here and not leap too far forward or be too drastic. You don't want to build like a house of cards with your reasoning where you wind up concluding something really wild and drastic. I think that these are all pretty safe inferences. I'm cushioning them with qualifying phrases. Likely this would occur, perhaps even with our allies. They might be less inclined. That's just kind of helping me stay safe, logical here, instead of saying this will happen. Okay, now I want to transition into another example. I've talked about the damage we're doing to ourselves, like politically, how that could impact us on the international stage. Uh, I'm going to narrow to a different kind of effect or negative outcome for us. Here's my transition. Even if this isn't the case, like then, even if that didn't happen, we still risk making conflict more difficult for ourselves. So now I need to elaborate on what I mean by that. Let me work in some source evidence. Civilians huddling in terror inevitably will begin to resent the fact that their liberties have been so drastically reduced by our actions. That's I'm gonna end there. I'm just paraphrasing what Woolf was talking about, where she's thinking to herself like, well, we could be outside with friends having tea, discussing art. Um, and rather than quoting it because it's just kind of lengthy and I didn't think it was going to work so well, I'll just paraphrase that. Okay, so this is my observation of what happens to civilians. Once again, I kind of package it as something that's going to be common for any civilian or true for any civilian rather than just her. Um, Now I'll go into like what does that matter? History has shown time and again that a population which grows too hostile um, toward invaders, maybe I should just say an invading force, is inclined to rebel. Okay, so I'm just kind of referencing what I know of history that a lot of times when people are under occupation like this, and it's been, brutal and harsh, um, that people push back. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about why that should concern us. Like, okay, if they're pushing back, well, then we're almost fighting a two-part war here. Like, we're fighting the actual army or military of the other side, and we've got this like guerrilla war going on against the common people, and that's no good. Waging war against a civilian resistance movement while also trying to defeat ooh, our rival country's official military um, would put a massive strain uh, on our forces, which we should take all possible steps to avoid. And I think I'm just going to stop there because I have basically everything that I need here for this to be a successful, kind of beefy body paragraph. Um, So I'm hoping that this helps a little bit as far as letting you see into my head and how I would put this together, um, why I'm incorporating the source the way that I do, and how my commentary works. If you watch this and have made it all the way to the end, I suppose there should be some kind of reward here. So let's see here. What should you do? You should send me an email where you tell me, okay, got it. Tell me a food you love that everybody else in the world seems to hate, or a food that everyone seems to love, which you yourself hate. So, kind of an unpopular opinion, cuisine wise. Send an email to me explaining that, and I'll know you've watched here to the end. Thanks, and have a good day, guys.